I guess I should warn you before today's video. If, like millions of people out there, you consider yourself just a casual Star Wars fan, you need to know I'm about to blow your mind. So if you're not ready for that, you need to stop watching. Feel me? I reiterate for the record, unless you're okay with discovering truths that will shatter your preconceived notions of the world's greatest franchise, you need to stop watching, because I'm here today to tell you the truth. The truth that they don't want you to know. The wonderfully, terribly spectacular truth. And the truth is that you have been lied to. Because there are, in fact, two, not just one, two theatrically released Star Wars films made by Lucasfilm that you have never seen. You've never seen them because they don't want you to see them. But today, I am lifting the veil. Oh, today I'm dropping dimes. Today is the day I tell you the truth. Today, I tell you about the Ewok Adventures. Yup, my homies. Yup. So at the time of this video's publication, the world is waiting with bated breath for Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, which is set to premiere on December 15th, 2017. The whole world's gone through a bit of a Star Wars renaissance the past few years. Disney purchased the franchise, and they haven't sat on it. In just 2 years, we've had 2 new Star Wars flicks in theaters, and the company's planning to continue putting a new one out each year, rotating from saga films to anthology films, presumably until they stop making money, which that will likely never happen. It's probably the most exciting time a Star Wars fan could ever hope to be alive. I mean, we had to wait a whole decade since Revenge of the Sith to get a new chapter in the saga. 32 years of waiting just to find out what became of the original trilogy's characters. But now it looks like the franchise is shaping up to be a yearly tradition. I will not live to see the last Star Wars movie. That's a pretty big shift from Lucas telling folks in 2005 that the story was completely finished.
No, absolutely, positively, you're really closing the door without any wiggle room whatsoever.
Right. There is no Episode 7.
The Disney era of Star Wars has opened the door for endless possibilities, but back in 1984, things were a bit dicier. Return of the Jedi had come out the previous year, and it looked like the story was done. Lucas had wrapped up his trilogy, and whispers of a prequel wouldn't occur for some time after. Most folks just assumed the saga was over, and we'd never return to the galaxy far, far away. But somewhere along the way, George Lucas had scribbled out plans for an hour-long TV special featuring the Ewoks, those half-pint Wookiee wannabes from the original trilogy's final chapter. But for reasons most fans are aware of, Lucas held back on giving it the green light. By the time Return of the Jedi had wrapped up its theatrical run, the production arm of ILM had fat stacks to burn, but nothing to burn it on, so Papa Lucas started shopping the story treatment around, hoping a major network would pony up and come on board. Only problem was, nobody was interested. See, the thing about TV movies is they've got to be long enough to support extensive advertising, and nobody was willing to bite the hook if they couldn't sense a solid return on investment. Eventually, ABC agreed to air it under one condition, that the movie be retooled so that it could fit into the network's 2-hour Movie of the Week programming slot. So the story was expanded. The script's runtime ballooned from 1 hour to 2 hours, and the papers were signed. If the red flags aren't going up at this point, they should. Because if you know your Star Wars TV history, you know padding the length for advertisements ultimately led to the original holiday special debacle. So I found it a little interesting that Lucas, who was famously embarrassed about how that all turned out, would be so willing to walk down the same path a second time, but whatever. So on November 25th, 1984, a little over a year after Episode 6, America was finally treated to the next chapter in the Star Wars universe, The Ewok Adventure, released theatrically overseas as The Caravan of Courage. Again, no, I promise, I am not making any of this up. You don't believe me? Take a look.
In a galaxy far, far away, a brother and sister search for their missing parents.
How are we gonna find them?
We will, don't worry.
And fate leads them to the magical Ewoks.
Now, I know what you're thinking, but I'm here to tell you, it's not that bad. Wait, wait, come back, just hear me out. So the story takes place on the Ewok homeworld of Endor, and centers around the Tawanis, a family of humans who end up marooned on the planet when their star cruiser crashes. Not really explained why, I'm just gonna assume that they ran out of gas, or they got lost while in hyperspace. I mean, this guy totally seems like the kind of guy who refuses to stop somewhere and just ask for directions, you know what I'm saying? The family is attacked in the middle of the night, and Mommy and Daddy Tawani are captured by a creature called the Gorax. Eventually, the Ewoks stumble upon the ship, they rescue the kids and take them in. Pretty soon, plans are hatched, a furry fellowship is formed, and our caravan of heroes sets out to rescue Mommy and Abba from captivity. It's not that bad of a concept, just could have been executed better. First thing you should understand, the Ewoks own in this movie. They work together, they play together, they fight enemies together. This dude's got an axe, this one's got a blow dart, this dude's got some kind of a magic stick, they got this weird dreidel that tells the future, they ride miniature ponies into battle. It's basically Lord of the Rings on Endor. What more could you ask from a movie? Oh yeah, I know what you're asking, but does it have hang gliders? It absolutely has hang gliders. You have to understand that this movie should not be taken seriously. If you want gritty Star Wars, this isn't for you. It's a kid-friendly family film. It's not designed to push the envelope in any direction. It does have some notable parts, however. For example, Caravan contains some of the last stop-motion work that Industrial Light and Magic ever did. It's choppy, hasn't aged well, but hey, find me a 1980s made-for-TV movie that has. The movie was nominated for 2 Emmy Awards, winning Outstanding Special Visual Effects, which isn't half bad considering the previous attempt at made-for-TV Star Wars ended in a laughable disaster. Warwick Davis reprised his role as Wicket, although this provides a few weird continuity errors because the movie supposedly takes place after Return of the Jedi, but the Ewoks seem to have little to no knowledge about humans at all, which is kind of weird considering they fought alongside several of them during a planet-wide invasion, but yeah, I know. Nerds who complain about continuity are the worst. If you start watching it with the lowest of expectations like I did, you'll be pleasantly surprised. On the other hand, if you start out expecting something on the level of Clone Wars, you're gonna rage quit within the first 5 minutes. It's a long movie. It's over 90 minutes, and it feels a whole lot longer if you're just sitting and watching it on the couch, because believe me, at times this thing can be tough to sit through. The Ewoks do not speak English, and so to help convey to the audience exactly what's happening, they forgo the opening crawl and instead employ, and you're going to want to hold onto your hat for this, an omniscient narrator.
Our story begins in a time long, long ago, deep in an enchanted forest on the distant moon of Endor.
Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds like the guy who narrated Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's because it most certainly is the guy who narrated Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and yes, I am aware of how out of place a narrator feels in the Star Wars universe. But hey, they had to do something. The 2 child actors the film is centered around cannot carry a scene to save their lives, and at times the acting is truly painful.
If we don't help them, they're gonna die.
Listen, as soon as I get my gun, we're history. We're out of this place.
Why can't we stay here with them?
Stay here with these walking hairbrushes? Come on, Cinto, they're animals.
No, they're not. I like them.
The low production values also seem really out of place in a franchise that's known for amazing work in that area, but again, it's made for TV, it's not a blockbuster film, so the quality's gonna be low. You really get the sense watching this that ILM just kind of grabbed a bunch of props they had left over and lying around from Return of the Jedi, headed out into the woods, and made this thing for next to nothing. For example, the big bad monster is clearly a dude in a suit. The creepy spider is clearly a puppet on strings. You can see them, and the bad guys and location for the sequel are clearly intended for a totally different film. Oh, sorry, yeah, by the way, if I didn't mention already, they totally made a sequel. Ewoks: The Battle for Endor, aka Ewoks 2, was released the following year and continued the adventure of the Tawani family. Ewoks 2 is almost universally regarded as being the superior film. This is total nonsense. Ewoks 2 takes all the problems of Ewoks 1 and amplifies them. I am now going to spoil key sections from both movies. If you are the kind of person who cares about spoilers of a 30-year-old made-for-TV children's show, you need to skip to this time code, and also consider rethinking your entire life.
I want to go home and rethink your life.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
Ready? Here we go. So, Ewoks 2 opens up with every member of the Tawani family except one being brutally murdered. Again, yes, this is a movie meant for kids. Sindel, the little girl from the first film, survives the attack, makes an escape, and meets an old hermit in the woods, and then joins the Ewoks in protecting their village and defeating the evil marauders who have taken control of the Endor moon. Wait a minute, I'm pretty sure I referred to Endor as a planet at some point earlier in this video. Can't wait to read those comments. Bless her for trying, but the poor girl playing Sindel is just totally unequipped to give a performance capable of saving this poorly devised picture. It makes no sense to me to establish a family dynamic in the first film, only to then remove everything but the weakest part of that dynamic in the second. The only thing worse than subjecting your audience to bad acting is to subject them to more bad acting the second time around. Boy, that was an angry nerd moment. So this is the second film here. If you're looking at the images on your screen and thinking to yourself, this doesn't look like Star Wars, that's because you had more sense than the Ewoks 2 writing staff. I've got this theory that Battle of Endor was actually supposed to be a different film, like a totally different movie, different franchise, different genre. Maybe it was supposed to be like a fantasy movie or something, but that film was scrapped and all production elements like the sets, the props, the costumes, what have you, they were all stored in a garage somewhere. And once ILM was told that they needed to make an Ewoks sequel, they took all the resources from that scrapped film, retooled and converted it poorly into something set in the Star Wars universe. Just a theory though, I can't prove it, but I honestly can't find any other explanation as to why a Star Wars movie would contain a witch that can shapeshift, a bunch of goons that look straight out of a medieval-themed Power Rangers episode, and a guy that's wearing prescription glasses from LensCrafters in a story that's supposed to be set a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Make of that what you will. All in all, you're gonna have to use your best judgment when deciding whether or not it's worth it to put in the 4 hours or so necessary to watch these flicks. I'm not your daddy. I can't make that decision for you, although I can give you some advice. Do you love Ewoks? Then go ahead and watch them. Do you hate Ewoks? Then skip them. The first one on a scale of awful to amazing is somewhat halfway decent. Second one on a scale of awful to amazing is useful only as a tool of torture. Seriously, that second one is just I don't know, I'm never gonna get those 2 hours back, man. I still think the first film, Caravan of Courage, could be salvaged into something that's a bit more compelling. If I had the time or big enough demand, I'd like to devise a way to improve it. Fan edits aren't exactly my thing, but I'm pretty sure there's enough there to work with that a good editor can take it from like a 3 to a 6.5 in IMDb speak. If you guys happen to care about Star Wars as much as you did when I covered Harry Potter, I might share some thoughts on how I'd fix it. To sum up, Ewoks 1 and 2 were an interesting experiment at an interesting point in Star Wars history. The bar for their success was set very low, so even though they didn't become instant classics, the release was a bit of a no harm, no foul situation. One thing I do know for certain is that Disney is doing their very best to scrub these two films from the pages of history. But we won't let them, will we? Of course not. We're the internet. We remember everything. Forever and ever. Ewoks 1 and 2 were released theatrically overseas. They were only seen briefly on TV here in the States. And if you'll notice when looking at the promotional material, ILM seemed to do everything in their power to keep people from watching these babies. I mean, there's not a single Star Wars logo anywhere. Why not? Likely, they just weren't happy with the finished product. And so rather than break their distribution deal with ABC, they sandbagged the releases. No hype, no critical examination. Plan worked perfectly. There have been a lot of strange and unflattering moments in Star Wars history, and I sometimes wonder how Disney's acquisition will affect the recollection of those moments. Make no mistake, Star Wars is back, and it will be back for a long time. The company is in this for the long haul. They've got big plans, and we are witnessing those plans coming to fruition. Still, I think the Ewok Adventure deserves some recognition. These are theatrically released Star Wars films. I mean, I'm not demanding a high-definition re-release or anything like that, but is it too much to ask for an anthology spin-off entitled Wicket the Warrior of Endor? Because I would absolutely shell out the extra money to see that in 3D. Hey, thanks folks, just a heads up, I'm gonna be gone for a few weeks, don't freak out, I'll be back barring any unforeseen circumstances. In the meantime, I guess you could, share this video and help grow my channel, or whatever, I don't care. Peace.